Hello there, this is Stephen Pugh of the Home Bible College, and this is the Year 2 study. We're going to call it Lecture 15b. The reason for that is because the previous Lecture 15 dealt with the book of Ecclesiastes, but it wasn't felt at the time that I was able to cover adequately the book of Song of Solomon as well, because that was going to be dealt with at the same time. But I felt that we really needed to do these in two separate sessions, so we're going to look at the Song of Solomon now. It's a book which I called a love song. This is a book that has only 8 chapters, written by Solomon. It tells of his love, and it tells the story of love. So I've called it the love song. Now, it's said that Solomon wrote over 1005 songs, but only one of them is recorded in Scripture. In 1 Kings chapter 4 verse 32 it tells us about that. The key words are beloved and the key words are love. So beloved refers to the name for the man and love is the name for the woman. Now many feel that this book should not be in the Bible, and most people are totally confused by it. I have got a number of books on my shelves here which go through this and try to explain it. Some of the best of books just get fairly muddled. In fact, one of my most faithful books, I shan't say which one it is, one of my most faithful books just says that this is just about the church and Christ and the relationship between Christ and the church. I don't think that has any traction whatsoever. I think that at the time when it was written there was no concept of the church. It was something all totally hidden in God. And also there's too much in this book that is too specific. This is a book about love. It's a book that's always read at Passover, just as Ruth is always read by the Jews at Pentecost. And in this book, Solomon describes the glorious experience of love. And we're going to see that it's a very, very interesting book. It's not about Solomon's love, interesting enough. It's about the love of a woman for a young man that she sees and falls in love with. It's all about a young woman. And to our untrained minds, it borders on what we would consider today to be vulgarity occasionally, but in terms of the poetry of its day, it is a model of decorum. It describes the love of God for Israel. Sometimes the prophets of God are called sometimes the prophets call Israel the wife of God, and so there's a certain sort of a sense of analogy there which we may discover. The key to the story is found in chapter 8 verse 11. It is the story of a poor girl who lives in Ephraim. She's called the Shulamite, and we'll refer. We don't know what her personal name is. We just know the little tribe that she comes from. She's called the Shulamite. That's all we know about her. And her brothers put her to work in the vineyards where she meets a young shepherd. It could be that they put her into the vineyards so that it cuts off some relation with this young shepherd. Maybe they consider the young shepherd to be unfit for her, not good enough for her. That would be a common thing for brothers to think about their youngest sister. And it's the story of their first love. It's told how that he returns to the sheep and he promises to return to her. In his absence, she is tortured, but something else happens. Something else happens that's even more dangerous for her love for the shepherd. A king comes along, possibly Solomon, we're not told. The king comes along and he sees her and he takes notice of her and he brings her into his harem in preparation to be married to her, presumably. But her heart is already captured, and whatever he says and whatever he promises, it's all nothing to her, because in the end she is released and she returns to her beloved shepherd boy and he brings her home. He is the hero of the story. He brings her home, and it is the triumph of love over everything the world could offer in return. It's the dream of women. It is the greatest lesson of men. What do women want more than anything at all? They want love, the sort of love that could conquer all other loves. And what do men want? They want a woman that is absolutely, totally devoted to him. And so this is the great love story. The song was meant to be sung in the round, and the daughters of Jerusalem would have sung the chorus when it's being sung. So it's a sort of an early form of play that they would sing. Some of the key words and some of the key phrases might be chapter 6 verse 3, where she says, "I am my beloved's, and my beloved's is mine. He feedeth among the lilies." Another famous verse is in chapter 8 verse 7, "Many waters cannot quench love." You see, whatever the king offered this young girl, it didn't put out her love for the shepherd boy. Neither can the floods drown it. If a man would give all the substance of his house for love, it would utterly be contemned. So that's the theme of the book. We have I'll just run through the book for you and explain some of it. In the very first passage, it begins up to verse 11. We have an introduction to the book, and then we have the Shulamite who speaks of her beloved shepherd. She's now already been taken by the women of the court, by what you would call the maids in waiting. She's taken by the maids into the harem, where she will have a long preparation to meet the shepherd, to meet the king, and to be prepared to marry him. But while she's there, she doesn't speak of the king. She speaks of her beloved shepherd. And the court ladies, twice they ask her, "Why do you love him? What do you love about him?" And each time she gives a wonderful description of this young boy that she's met, that's captured her heart. And then in the latter part of chapter 1 and chapter 2, she then speaks more. These are memories of her first meeting with her beloved. She speaks of him, "My beloved is like a cluster of camphire." Now, I don't know what that is, but I expect it's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful thing. And that's what she says. They say, "Why is he so beautiful?" And she says, he is comely. Comely means he is beautiful. He is absolutely beautiful to her. And so we have some of the most beautiful statements are found here. Often people talk about this being the church, but with the church it would be the other way around. It would be the love of the king for the maid, but in this occasion it's the love of the maid for the shepherd boy. That's the point. It's interesting also that we have a section which starts at the beginning of chapter 8 verse 8, where the court ladies ask her about when she first met him, and she begins to recount the first time they met, how that the brothers hindered her from meeting him and putting her in the vineyards, but she tells of her waiting for him in the evening, and how that the watchmen in the vineyard, how that they also hindered her in searching for him. She tells how she found him again, and she tells the court ladies not to hinder her in finding him again. Then we have the next session, which starts in chapter 3 verse 6. The people of Jerusalem see this great royal procession. It's the procession of the king, and we could think that it's Solomon himself processing, and he's coming up to Jerusalem. But while the king is processing to Jerusalem, the young shepherd goes out to rescue her from the king. And the shepherd manages to meet her, and she proposes that he come and meet the king and explain. The Shulamite, she proposes for him to come back, and he immediately offers his assistance to her. She offers herself to him. She says, I will help you in whatever way. And he gives her hope. He says, I will come and rescue you. And the daughters of Jerusalem. This isn't the court ladies now. The daughters of Jerusalem encourage them both. They say, come on, come together, you two. Love one another. In the next section, we have her discussions with the king. She manages to get an audience with the king. And of course, it could be King Solomon. The first thing he does is to flatter her with all sorts of flatteries. But you know, she explains that her meeting with the king was absolutely purely an accident, just an accident of life, that she wasn't putting herself in his way so that he might see her and want her. And she does something quite outstanding. She leaves the king. She leaves his presence. And the king calls upon her. He says, return to me, return to me. And she says, why? What is there to look at in me? And the king flatters her some more. A great long session of flattery. But she, the Shulamite, she rejects him. She says, I belong to my beloved, not to you. I belong to my beloved. And then the Shulamite eventually is restored, and she returns home with her beloved. As far as he's concerned, he's rescued her. As far as she is concerned, she spurned all the wealth of all the world for a young shepherd boy who lives in abject poverty. The shepherds were the poorest of the poorest of the poor, as they are today. And she would prefer to have his love than all the wealth of any king. What a great story, isn't it? The Shulamite and her beloved, they visit the place that they first met each other. And the brothers discuss her dowry. Very interesting passage. They say, you know, if she were a wall, then we would endow the wall. But if she was a door, we would bolt it. And she answers the brother. She says, I am a wall, endow me. And the beloved asks her to tell her story, and the Shulamite owns him as her true love. And so there we have one of the greatest love stories ever. How a young poor girl and a young poor shepherd boy fall in love, and all the wealth and all the flattery of the greatest king on earth cannot break their love for one another. Now, I think you'll enjoy that book. I think you'll enjoy this more than anything else in the Bible. It's a wonderful, wonderful story. God bless you. Look forward to talking to you again another day. God bless. Bye now.